Oh, it says live.
There we go. Yep, we're live.
Yes, we're live.
We've launched.
We did it.
We did it.
Premium account on X is required to create a live broadcast. Okay, well, then they can be removed. I guess we're not going to be on Twitter. So I don't know.
Are we usually on Twitter?
I think so, but it wants us to
Okay.
have a premium account. And so right now we are just live on Facebook and the YouTubes because I don't know how else to do the other ones because I need a key and I don't have a key. So
if anyone can find the golden key and send it to Anne.
yes. Yes, Candace is here. Hello, hello.
Well, Candace can ask us questions. Do you want to lead us off,
Perfect.
Anne? Why don't you introduce the whole thing?
Oh, I guess I should do that. Okay,
You should do that.
Let me restart this and see if we're actually live on. See, it's not showing up live. Is it showing up live on YouTube's? Where are you watching this from?
Yes, where are you, Candace?
I've done something wrong. Oh, I guess it just says live. I guess. Oh, I found it. Okay. Let me close that. It just says live. I guess. Otherwise.
Well, other people are here. Zilla is here.
We did it. Okay. All right, y'all.
Great.
They for some reason put me in charge tonight, which was definitely a terrible idea because I don't understand this technology. So
You're doing great.
So there you go. So I'm Ann Rose, and this is Jackie Lipton and Kelly Dexterhouse, and we are here to answer your questions from the Literary Lens podcast of the Tobias Literary Agency. So please make sure you are using the chat feature, which is, I don't know where it is on your machine. It's somewhere. So type in your questions. We will answer that. If you don't have questions, we have some that were sent in earlier throughout the week, and yeah, so we'll figure it out. So thanks. I'm trying. So
You're doing great. Candace says she has lots of questions, and we also have pre-question questions. So do you want to lead us off, Candace, or do you want us to start with a pre-question question? I can't. Oh, I can see the chat.
Let's start with one of ours.
Okay.
Maybe she's typing. Let me go to our.
She's allowed to type
here.
Yes.
Oh, here is our first question. Let me put it over here, and then I'll put it over here, and I'll click it. Now it's thinking. Boom!
Oh, wow, you're doing great.
Oh my gosh, it's like I'm a pro or something.
Totally.
No, not a pro. All right. So one of our questions that were asked earlier today or sometime before that we got from our amazing social media maven is what should the word count range be for picture books, middle grade, young adult, and adult for a debut book?
Ooh.
I think this is a really great question. It's the key to me in this question is the debut, because I think there are always outliers, but you almost have to prove yourself in order to have the privilege of being an outlier within the word range targets. So I can just speak to picture book and middle grade, and I'll let you two speak to YA and adult.
Perfect.
But for picture book, I still think that 500 word range is a really great target to make if you're a debut. You know, I'm actually getting a lot of picture book manuscripts that are a lot shorter than 500, like 150, 250. 500 is a really good target range. Not to say they can't be longer, but if you're a debut, I think that's a really good target to reach for. And then middle grade. So this is the interesting thing about middle grade right now is it's such a just kind of a tender market is like what I'd like to call it right now. It does seem like if you're a debut, hitting for the shorter word count is really wiser right now. People are really wanting just very, very traditional middle grade prose manuscripts, things that can be illustrated. So I'm thinking like 30,000 words, 40,000 maybe, unless you're going specifically for the older middle grade that's kind of a crossover into YA. Then you can go a little bit longer, maybe 50,000. But, and then I will also say, if you are writing sci-fi fantasy in that older range, it can creep up into the 60, low 70s because of the world building. But I think for the really traditional middle grade, if you're a debut, those 30 to 40,000 words is really where you should be aiming at. Do you, I mean, I know you both rep middle grade. Would you correct me in any of that, or would you add to any of that?
To be honest, I've mainly done middle grade novels in verse, which are much shorter than that.
Much
but
shorter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in my experience, my middle grade stories have been a little bit on the longer side. So I think the Curious League, when we sold that, was close to 80,000 words. So I don't shy away from things in middle grade up to 80,000, but like once it hits at 80,000, then I start like, is it getting too long? So I think like 80,000 is the topper for middle grade, in my opinion.
And I will say that the middle grade that I've sold has been around that, between 70 and 80,000, but they were fantasy. And also, that was probably 3 years ago. So the middle grade that I've sold this year has all been much, much shorter. So I think that's interesting. It's just, like I said, it's a tender market. It's just not sure quite what it wants right now. And debut makes it even a little bit more just questionable. Anyway, how about for YA and adult?
Jackie?
Well, you've done probably YA more recently than I have.
That's fair. So similarly for young adult, I think like the low range, like a contemporary young adult book that's hitting like the lower range of young adult, 60,000 is like probably your starting off point. But it shouldn't creep up higher than 80,000. So I think that that's kind of like where that sits. But then if you're doing anything in the genre element, with whether that be fantasy, science fiction, maybe you're doing historical, maybe there's a speculative angle, I think you can go a little higher than 80,000, but I would caution going over 100,000 at this point, especially for debut.
Yeah, I think Lynn Miller Lockman's Torch, which is historical and very complicated with a collective protagonist, is probably around 90, but it was not her debut, and it was some years ago, and the one she just released is a YA novel in verse, so that's much shorter. I actually would say similar things for adult debut. Like, I have not taken out an adult debut fiction in any genre, including speculative and historical, that's over 100. And I've not seen the need for any of them to be over 100. Like when I've had a manuscript that is over 100 and I've worked with the author, there's even speculative, even historical, there's always seems to be a way to make it a little less. So I think sometimes it's not even a question of what the market will bear. It's often a question of what does this story need to tell it properly.
Very true. Also, we got a link for one of our colleagues, Sarah. They have a posting on their website that helps provide word counts by genre. So if you want to, I don't know, take a screenshot or copy that link down really quickly, you should be able, or just go to sarahnicolas at .com and check it out there. And maybe that will be helpful.
Yeah.
I think that what I'm hearing, though, is for a debut author, shy towards the shorter rather than the longer.
Yeah. I agree.
And I don't want to lose, I know you're hosting, but just because Candace's question is about to pop off the top of my screen, she asked the least favorite trope we've seen lately.
Don't worry, I was going back there. I did see it. So I am very, I saw that come in. It like came in right as I was posting mine.
Do your job and Kick it off.
Excellent. So we do have a question from the audience, which is, what is our least favorite trope that we have seen lately? Jackie, do you want to kick us off on that one?
I don't know if it's a trope, and it's the same one I always say. It's the disgruntled ex-CIA agent out to like do one final great thing or avenge a partner who's like, and it's not my cup of tea, and it's been done to death. And if I could really, like, every time I see that setup, the person presenting it to me is saying, no, this is different because this person was in the military, or this is different because this person lives in Nebraska. And it's like, no, it's the same sort of basic concept. So that's mine.
Kelly.
Oh, I'm seeing a lot in middle grade, just the typical, the child protagonist has to go save a parent. Or, I see that a lot in fantasy, and I think they could get more creative with that. And YA, I see a lot of the protagonist discovers that they're magical in a world where magic is outlawed, or protagonist is not magical in a world where not being magical puts you at a disadvantage. I don't know. I just feel like people could get more creative with those particular tropes. I actually love a great kind of dark academia. I love a good kind of academy story, like school-based story. But they seem to be coming at me every other submission. And so it just needs to stand out in a really unique way.
Those were great answers, and I didn't have anything nearly as creative and it's not even a least favorite. I just recently, especially in anything that has a romance in it, everything I've been seeing is enemies to lovers. Everything has been enemies to lovers. And I mean, I love a good enemies to lovers. It's fantastic, but I worry that we are just beating that one to death a little bit. So that is something that I have seen. Again, not my least favorite, just something I've seen a lot of. So, all right, let me see. Oh, we have a question here from Zilla. I think that's how you say your name. If it's wrong, I apologize because I'm terrible at reading names. What horror trends, tropes, etc. are you seeing on editor lists? Oh, that's a good question. Go ahead, Kelly, because Jackie.
Well, I was blowing my nose because I had the aromatherapy thing going, and Anne said, "Is your house on fire?" So I turned it off, and now my nose is running.
So
sorry, turn it back on.
I know a lot of YA editors are kind of interested in the genre meshing, blending. So like horror, romance trends. I know that horror is still very much desired in picture book and YA. I mean, middle grade and YA. But everybody is also cautioning that with it needs to be unique, because I do think that there's been a big boom in horror recently. But the reason why I said picture book probably inadvertently a minute ago is because people are asking for kind of scary or creepy picture books. So horror and picture books can be done. It just needs to be kind of done correctly. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Did you have anything to add, Jackie?
Well, I've heard a number of editors, including one today, talking about horror-mance, and I've not read a good one, but that doesn't mean that you can't write a good one. I'm still having trouble wrapping my arms around that concept, but I've heard about half a dozen editors saying, "Oh yeah, I'd really like some horror-mance." And it's like, okay, well, if I see one, I guess I'll know what it is.
That's fair. I think too, editors have been talking about, especially in the horror space, that, they don't want it to be gore for the sake of gore, right? So we hear that a lot. We hear a lot that they'd like when it explores something a little bit deeper, like some sort of social, emotional something that is going on, and it brings that, that discussion in a new and interesting way. Trying to think of some other things that I've heard recently about horror. I think that's it. Genre blending. Yeah. All those things. So hopefully that answers your question.
I will say Zilla says that her kids love creepy books, Creepy Cran especially, and kids like creepy books.
Oh, they do.
I love creepy carrots, and I would love
carrots.
to see books like that in my inbox. So sure.
I'm sorry this question kind of covers you up there a little bit, Kelly. Zachary writes, have written a book that takes place in another country and used a word in that foreign language for the title. Anyone? Would you like to try to pronounce that? Because I will just butcher it and it'll be terrible.
Sanguma?
Sanguma? That's where I was going to go with it, but okay. Meaning sorcerer. Is that bad? Would I need to change it to English? So if I'm going to take this question off so we can see Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. So I think the question is, like, if you're going to use that word, and as long as there's context in the book that makes it clear that that is what it is, a sorcerer in the book, I don't think there's any issue with using it in the book. Using it as a title, however, I think that raises the question of whether or not what the book is about, right? Like, it doesn't, if we don't know the word without any context and just see that as an agent or an editor, it's not really going to mean much to them. So personally, I would say that maybe pick a different title. Anyone? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have jumped in. I should have asked y'all first. So,
well, I mean, I'd also say that titles always change anyway. And I think some agents, I mean, I think Anne's point is absolutely right, that if an agent is busy and going through a lot of submissions and they're not drawn to something if they don't know what it means. By the same token, I tend not to really pay any attention to titles. I'm terrible at thinking of them. I don't pay much, just me personally, when I'm reading my queries, I just don't really look at them. But I think, why risk disinteresting the agents who are drawn in by a title? Like, why not make it something that tells the person a little bit more about the story?
Kelly.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I do love a good title and work hard with my clients to come up with a good title when we are going out on sub. So I think that when I see words in a title that are confusing or not known to me, instead of intriguing me, it tends to distance the reader. So I think you really want something that would draw a reader in.
Yeah. So like my colleagues have said, so for the title, I would probably suggest trying something else, because I agree with Kelly. Like, I will, if I just am kind of scrolling through my inbox, if it has a great title, I'll pick it before I pick the other ones around it, just to see what it's about. So, and I think that editors are the same way. So I've played with titles when going on sub with projects, and I do notice that projects that have like a catchier title do get a better response. So
actually, that's true. I have noticed that too.
Yeah. So, and sometimes as an agent, I will work with my client. We will pick a title that we know that this will never be the title of the book when it goes to print. But our goal is not to pick a title for it to go to print. Our job is to pick a title that an editor will go, oh, I want to read that. And so a lot of times we'll just pick a title just for that purpose.
Right.
So let me go through here. I think I have it. Here is another one. Sonia asks, what would you say is the sweet spot for adult romantasy word count? Jackie?
Yeah, those do tend to be a little longer. I have not sold any. I've offered on a few and I read a fair amount. They do tend to be over 100 often, just because there's a ton of world building. Because to me, adult romantasy is basically, it's basically fantasy that leans heavily into the romance. So it's built out world type fantasy. It's not urban type fantasy. So most of the ones, the shorter end tends to be around 100. To be fair, I've never worked on a debut. Like the ones I've offered on have been established authors who are seeking a new agent, and low hundreds.
Kelly, did you have any thoughts?
No, but I don't really rep adult romantasy. I've sold YA romantasy, and that was around 90. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd be a little more conservative when it comes to those genres. Even for fantasy, I'm like 100,000 words is probably really good.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah.
110 maybe sweet. If you get over 120, I think that then you're getting too high.
Now, I think it's also interesting to note that what they come to us as and what we pitch them as is different than what they are published as. So the YA romantasy that I've sold tends to be around 90, but when they're published, they're all a little bit slightly over 100. They grow with the editor, but that's when they have permission to grow.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of middle grade fantasy as well that I've sold, right? I try to get it right around 70 or lower, but then when they're published, they're all around 85. One of them was close to 90. So it grew a lot with the editor. Anyway, it's just an interesting thing to keep in mind.
For sure. All right. Let's see what another question is here. Oh, here's a good one. Let me grab it and post it. I should have been prepping. Sorry, y'all.
No, you're doing great.
And then, so this is one from earlier today, which is there such thing as too many chapters?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is.
Kelly, would you like to start us off?
Yes, you start.
No. I mean, well, sure there is, but really, I think however many chapters you need is what serves your particular story. At least in the books that I've worked on, I've never worried about the number of chapters.
I think I would rephrase that, and this may not be what the person means, but if it's asking if there's such a thing as too many chapter breaks, I've seen that. I've seen a book of the appropriate length broken down into really, really short chapters when it gets choppy then.
Okay. Yeah.
So that may be, I don't know if that's what it means.
Where instead it's maybe a scene break, but within the same chapter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I don't think a number exists, like if it's too many. I do think that there can be too few.
Mm.
So I've been sent books. I've been sent submissions where it's like, here's my 140,000 word novel and it has 10 chapters. And I'm like, oh, yikes. That feels like there's a pacing issue there because 10 chapters for that many pages that many pages is a lot. Or a little. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
exactly.
I think there can be too few, but I don't think there can be too many necessarily. So I'm kind of obsessed that we have like this little thing going on here in our chat that people know each other. So everyone, Michelle says hi to Zilla and Bray, and Zilla comes back with Michelle. It's so good to see you. I love this. This is making me so joyful. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. And speaking of Zilla, she has a question. When looking to extend rep to an author, do any of you do a little deep dive into the author's social media presence? Ladies, do we do some deep dives?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
The simple answer is yes. I don't know about the other two here, but I will actually do a deep dive before I even ask for a full.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. I actually do that too. I would question what she means by deep dive, because I'm not going to like read every post you've ever written.
Oh, no.
I'm just looking to see, well, do you have a platform? Have you written anything that might be problematic when negotiating a morals clause in a contract, like that kind of thing? Like, I'm not sort of combing through. I'm just getting a sense of kind of who you are and the presence that you present online.
So if that doesn't answer your question, please enter it into the chat and we will keep discussing. Otherwise, we will move on to your next question, because thank you so much for your great questions. What's a red flag to you that an author queried their project too quickly?
You mean when it's not ready? Is that the...
Yeah, maybe that's
what maybe indicates that it's not quite ready. That's interesting. I actually have had a couple in my inbox recently where I felt like the story and the content was really great and unique, and I was really excited. But then the writing was just not quite there yet. And that's really hard because you could see glimmers like, okay, this person has a lot of potential, but the manuscript was just not there yet. And things that gave that away to me were tense issues, some point of view kind of violations, particularly in first person. And I think that there's just times when I'm just like, okay, this author's not controlling the narrative the way quite that they need to be in control of it. So that it just felt like it was still an early draft, not quite polished. Not that it couldn't be there someday, but it just like, it felt like the author knew that they had something good. They knew it. They were confident of it. They just needed to take maybe one or two revisions to really polish their writing, their craft of their writing. And, it's a hard thing to kind of feedback to give to a writer. So usually I don't, because I don't want to offend them, because then, but if I really feel like the concept is just great and it has a lot of potential, I want them to know that and just say, I really love this. I think that you just need, if you're not getting other bites from other agents, this might be why. And just, take some time to work on your craft. But that's for me. What do you guys think?
I would agree. I mean, I would agree with you. And I might add, it's a revision thing usually, that you just haven't polished, you haven't taken some time away and come back to it with fresh eyes. And the thing that usually suggests that to me, and I do put this in feedback to authors occasionally, is when there's just a lot of exposition, when you haven't really gotten to know the characters well enough that you and the reader can trust them to propel the action, that the writer is still feeling the need to kind of explain things to the reader rather than just letting the character take them on the journey.
Yes. To go along with both of these things, I always like to say that I can always tell when it's like the writer, it's still the version where the writer is telling themselves the story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you can just kind of get, it's just a feeling that you get, that that they're still kind of figuring it out. So there's, generally speaking, there's a little bit more telling, a little less showing. And there's also this indication of like the character is doing this thing because the plot needs the character to do this thing. But the character themselves aren't really even sure why they're doing this thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the things that I notice when a script or a manuscript is kind of what I call underbaked. And I will at times, if I think, again, like Kelly said, if I think the concept is really good and it's strong and like there's some potential there, but it's just underbaked, I'll even say, if you continue to work on this, send it back my way, because I'm happy to revisit something. It's just not quite ready yet. So we did not mean to make you sweat.
No, don't be nervous about why does that, Zilla, let's talk. Why does this make you nervous? We're all online. We all say things that, in hindsight, we wish we hadn't said. No one is going to judge your book or your ability to be an author because you put a silly post up one day.
Yeah, it's
as Stephen says right above, you should be deep diving prospective agents.
Yeah.
It's a mutual relationship.
Yep.
Definitely.
We all kind of want to know about each other before we commit to work or even think about committing to work with one another.
And you should.
Yes. I know that most of my clients I've had for a very long time, and so we've been together for years. And so, if I'm going to start this monogamous relationship with you, then I want to know what you're about. Like, I want to know that we can talk to each other and communicate well and all of that. Like, that's really important because it's not just as important for me; it's important for you. Like, I want to be your best advocate, and if I don't think I can be your best advocate, then there's no. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Candace has a question. For middle grade and YA, do we see one audience favorite POV over others? Oh, that's a good question.
I will say historically, middle grade leans third person, YA as of the last 10, 15 years, first person. But I don't think that if it's done well, one or the other, it really matters. I'm seeing a lot of middle grade in first person, but first person's really hard to do well. It's even harder to do well in middle grade. And it's extremely limiting. So I think that it's hard to make those work. And in YA, again, first person's very limiting. So it has to be, you really have to understand your craft and understand what the limitations and the ways you can play with first person. And, it's hard to do.
And one thing I would say about first, and am I cutting you off? Am I interrupting? I think a lot of authors, particularly early authors, sometimes use first person as a crutch and, going back to the telling yourself the story thing that Anne was talking about. So I do see a lot of early pieces where, in first person, the character walks onto the stage and tells the reader who they are and what they're doing, which you actually wouldn't do. Like if you're telling a story in first person, you're not thinking, my name is, and I look like this, and here's what I'm going to do. And this is what Kelly means by limiting. It's harder because you can't do that if you're doing it well. So I think people think, well, first person is easy because I've read a lot in first person and all I have to do is have the character come onto the page and tell. I mean, Nat isn't here tonight, but one of her pet peeves in picture books, and mine too, is the character walking on the page in first person and telling the reader who they are and what they're doing. And it's like, well, the picture book you've got, as Kelly said, 500 words maybe. So you can't use it to just say, hi, my name is, and this is what I'm doing, because that's really boring. So I think if you're going to do it, don't think it's easier. It's not easier.
No, it's not. It's really not. And that's what I mean by point of view violations. I see a lot of it in first person. Because if you're in first person, you really can only be thinking what a person would write, what that person would be naturally thinking. They wouldn't be thinking about their hair color or what they're putting on, and what they're critiquing. It's just their appearance or somebody else's appearance. It gets much deeper and it's much harder to reveal character and the external, especially setting. They wouldn't be thinking about their kitchen and what it looks like because they just live in their kitchen. And so it's a really hard point of view to write in and write well. And in picture books, I'm with Nat. We started. It's also extremely limiting to the illustrator. So, yeah.
Well, we talked about third person, but let's talk about third person in all its glory, right? We have first person, we have third person close, third person limited, and third person omniscient. So, any thoughts on any of these?
I mean, I love a close third person, but that's also because you have so much freedom in that. You can go, you can zoom way out and then you can zoom way in. And it just, I don't know. I think close third person is wonderful because it gives you all of the advantages of first person, but then also you have the advantages to play that third person lens gives you. So it's, and when any point of view, when it's done well, the reader shouldn't be thinking about it. It should feel so innate to the voice. And so if you are a reader and you're noticing the point of view, something's not working quite right.
Good point.
Any additional thoughts, Jackie?
No, I agree with that. I do find third person omniscient can be a little distancing because you lose. I mean, you can pull in and out the way you can in third limited, but not to the same extent if you're doing a really classical third person omniscient. I think it can really work in sort of complicated fantasy and sci-fi, but just in a contemporary fiction, I agree with Kelly.
All right. Let's see. Oh, we have one down here. From Jessica. Say you query an agent and they read your full manuscript and are interested in working with you. What happens next? Kelly, would you like to join? Would you like to start us off?
So if I read a full and really loved it, a lot of times what I'll do then is reach out to the author and let them know I really love this, and then ask them, what else are you working on? I really want to know, is this just the only book you've written? What other ideas do you have? And then a lot of times I'll request a phone call just to talk about it and my ideas, just see what their vision is for the manuscript, for their career, and again, we would talk about other projects they're working on as well. And, just to get a sense of if that is similar to, I want to make sure that my vision for the manuscript and what they were trying to do with it matches with theirs, because I think that's very important. I don't often or always offer on those phone calls, but sometimes I do. Just really depends. Yeah. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm about the same. I mean, I'm going to put a pin in fiction for a second and talk about nonfiction, because nonfiction can be a little different in that you're probably not reading a full. I mean, those sell on proposals. So the author may have written a full and I may have read it, but really I'm looking at the proposal because I'm going to send the proposal to editors and say I have a full available, or whatever. But a lot of nonfiction folks, really, this is the book they're writing. They're not planning a career in nonfiction writing. They're an expert in something and they want to say something about it. So to Kelly's point about asking what else you may be working on, I don't tend to do that as much with a nonfiction author. Like, I've had nonfiction authors say, oh yeah, I'm hoping to do another book, on this other thing or whatever. But I'm with nonfiction, I personally am focusing more on selling that book and seeing how it goes. There are people who write nonfiction and fiction, and I rep both. So there might be that discussion of, well, would you also be interested in my novel? And then of course I'd want to have a sense of whether I'm a good agent for that. But I did just want to make that point, because if you're just like straight one and done nonfiction, it's going to be more about your platform, your expertise, your writing style. A lot of experts, from academic disciplines need to learn to write in a more sort of trade nonfiction-y style. I know I did when I started writing trade nonfiction. So that's a slightly different conversation for me.
That's really interesting. It's a good point.
I think you both answered that perfectly. So we will go on. I think I would like to highlight Stephen's comment here, which is it's better to have no agent than to have the wrong agent. And I think that is so critical. Absolutely. 100%. You have it. You nailed it, Stephen. Jessica has another question. If you read a manuscript, an MS, in first person, but it wasn't done right, would you pass the MS or request that they rewrite it in third person? Wow.
Depends on what wasn't done right. Wasn't done right is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'm assuming that Jessica's talking about like what Kelly was saying, like if you weren't using the point of view to its advantages that you could be, and so it would probably be better if the author tried to write it in third. That maybe that's what Jessica means. I have never requested an author to change point of view ever, so I don't think I would ever even request that. So anyone?
I might say it as feedback. Like, if you find, I might read it and say, I'm finding, I'm not really relating to the first person here. If you find you don't have luck with other agents, maybe you'd like to try writing some scenes in a different POV and see how that feels to you. I wouldn't be requesting it. I'd be saying, this is a tip that might be helpful for, because I think what is inherent in Anne and my comment is it's your book and your name is on it, and we don't know your book better than you know your book, and we're subjective. So, if you've conceived of it in first person, who are we to say, no, this needs to be in third? So I might say it just as a tip. I might say, it's not working for me in first, see what other agents say. And maybe if you don't have any luck, you want to try that. But I would never say you have to do that. This is a revise and resubmit. If you write it in third person, send it back.
Yeah, I think too, as a writer myself, right, I've done both. So when I wrote The Seemingly Impossible Love Life of Amanda Dean, it came to me in third person, and that's the first third person book I'd ever written. Everything else I had written before that book, I had written in first person. But that book, for whatever reason, was it just came to me and I started writing in third. At one point I was like, I'm writing this in third. Is this weird? Should I be writing this in first? So I stepped back, I opened a new document, and I started trying to write it in first. And about a page and a half later, I was like, no, this is wrong. I hate everything about this. This is not the point of view for this book. And I closed it and I never thought of it again. So I think that sometimes you just have to take it and test it out, which feels right for the story. My next book, which is A Excellent Chance to Fall in Love, which comes out this September, is written in first person. And so, but that's what the book needs. So it just, sometimes it's about not just what you are comfortable with writing, but what the story needs for you to be able to tell it. So sometimes just try it out.
Yeah, I think that's really right. And especially, I think that sometimes it'll take a couple drafts for you to find it. And I think that that's fine too. And in my book, it's dual viewpoint. And one of the characters was definitely third person, and it's also dual timeline. So I was writing his POV in third person past, but I was really struggling to connect with the protagonist who was in the current timeline. So I started writing her in first person present. It didn't work great, but it was my way into her character. And about 4 or 5 drafts in, I switched it. So they're both third person, past tense, but it took me writing that in first person helped me find her. But then third person was really where it needed to be. So I think you could try, just don't be afraid to try and experiment with point of view. Because I'm a really firm believer that no writing goes to waste. So
yes, totally.
And I'm also a real firm believer that if you think that you've written 3 drafts and you've revised enough, you're wrong. Like 3 drafts, maybe once you're a very experienced writer. But I think it takes a lot to find, if you're a debut, to find your way into these characters in the story and finding your voice as a writer. So don't be afraid to do the work and have fun with it.
Yeah. Our next question is from Michelle, and Michelle would like to know, is first person present tense too limiting for adult science fiction? I'm wondering if I should revise my manuscript to past tense to get more interest.
I mean, that's kind of a similar question to the previous question, because it's asking an objective question about something that's really a subjective choice. I do see what's behind it. And I mean, I think the best way to really, interrogate this question is to read a lot of recently published sci-fi. And, there is good sci-fi written in the first person present and the first person past and the third, so, but if you look at what's published recently, read 3 or 4 books with a writer's eyes on, and look at, what is the effect of this verb tense and this point of view on this story. How is it serving the story? Because your question does make sense. I mean, I'm not making fun of the question. And sci-fi does have more world building in it. And, I'm not sure if it's a tense thing as much as a POV thing. But I would read. I would read and see what people are doing and what impact it has on you as a reader and then as a writer.
I also think it might be interesting to consider is your book very character driven?
True.
If it is very character driven and your character is experiencing everything for the first time and it's coming at them, first person present tense might work. But if it's very much the traditional sci-fi where the world building is huge and your character is very familiar with that and it's a little bit more plot driven, then past tense might give you a little bit more freedom to build that world a little bit more.
I keep thinking about Murderbot, which is very character driven and very short, and it's not, I mean, there is world building, but it's very much about that character. And I honestly can't remember what verb tense it's written in, because it works.
Yeah. See, I read this question a little bit as, so they want to use past tense because in past tense, you can have retrospect. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea of that this thing had already happened. And so now I have retrospect that I can add to it. Yeah. And so that can be tricky because sometimes you end up telling us before you show us. And so something to think about too, if you're making that decision of whether it should be past or present. But again, like we mentioned before, I would suggest taking a scene, taking a chapter, rewriting that one chapter in that other format, and then just seeing which one you like better. So which one feels right for the story. So,
yeah.
Stephen said something, I write in first person because it forces me to write as the person with a very close narrative distance. It makes exposition very difficult, which also makes me focus more on showing versus telling. Very good. Oh, and then it looks like our boss is trolling us this evening, and has asked a question. Hello, Lane. Thank you for joining us this evening. How do you feel about a book that starts with a character waking up? If the book ends with the same character going to bed, I mean, at least then it would be a full circle.
Yes.
Wouldn't it?
And my response to this is that Lane, who is not here because he's sick, should actually be in bed and should not be on this podcast. So that would be my response.
That's a good response, Jackie. Yeah. Very good response.
Feel better, Lane.
Yeah.
Yes. Now it's okay. Everyone's trolling Lane now. So if waking up is an important plot point, it doesn't matter to me about the book ending with the character going to bed. Lane, ha 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 ha. These are great. Thank you. Thank you. Oh wait, more on second thought.
A cry for help. It is a cry for help.
Is it? Is it a cry for help? It might be. Let us know. You know the password if you need us to call someone. So let's see. Jessica, I'm writing a middle grade novel in first, and now I'm scared I'm not doing it right. Oh, don't be scared.
We are the worst. We should never do this again.
We are failing if we have scared you. No, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid at all.
I mean, that's what revision is also for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one does it right in the process of the writing of the first draft or the second. So that you shouldn't be scared of that.
I just sold a middle grade novel in first. It's not a debut. It's an option book, but it's in first, and the first book on that contract was also in first person and was middle grade.
I mean, I have Sydney's book right here, which is a middle grade. This is her second book, but her first book, which is It Happened on Saturday, was first person middle grade, and I sold that. And this is now her second, which is also in first person.
I love that cover. Grade.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it great? They did.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I'm going to show it off a little bit here because like the inside,
the
book is like ombre here. Like they did a fabulous job. It's gorgeous. So. Okay.
And could I just say, if people want to feel better and not take us as being the gods of the universe, because we are not, just go into a bookstore or a library and grab a bunch of recent titles in your genre off the shelf and read the first chapter, or do it on your Kindle and read the first chapter for free. You will see successful books in first, in third, in omniscient, in all kinds of verb tenses. We're just giving craft tips. And, whenever I give craft tips, I always say these are revision tips because you got to write the thing first, which is what Kelly was saying. And everyone's looking for an excuse not to finish writing because they're scared then they'll have to revise it and show it to someone. So don't do what you need to do.
Yes.
Like I also think that it's a great tip for whether or not you feel like your POV is hitting correctly is read it out loud to yourself.
Yeah.
Or have someone read it out loud to you. It really helps you figure out where the point of view may not be working.
Right. And I want to point out what Stephen said here, which is, write it, have faith. You can always change it. Like that. This is a perfect show of like what the writing community should be, is like helping each other, lifting each other up. So thank you, Stephen, for jumping in and saying that. We appreciate you. So niche question. I love niche questions. If you get an agent with one novel, but you also co-write novels with an unagented author, what is the likelihood of those co-authored novels being published traditionally?
I mean, go Kelly.
Well, I mean, the likelihood of those co-authored novels being published traditionally isn't based on whether or not they're co-authored. It's whether or not they're written well into, there's a place for them in the market. You would always have a conversation with your agent about how would we market this? How would we submit this? And how that's done at different agent is different at each agency and with each agent. So
yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. It's not an impossibility for a co-authored book to be submitted traditionally and published traditionally. So there you go.
I have a very good friend whose first 2 books, actually, she was unagented and her co-author was agented. So.
All right. We got another one from Zilla. Do you find it more difficult to sell multi-POV over a single or dual? Thinking specifically of slasher type horror. Well, Lane is not here this evening. So Jackie, do you want to take a swing at this one?
I mean, no. I think this is, I can answer it in terms of not necessarily slasher type horror. Right. I think that it's a more general question. And I always ask the question with any multi-POV novel. I mean, I do have a multi-POV horror. It's not slasher, but out on sub at the moment. How many points of view do you need to tell the story? Because again, it's like what I said earlier about sometimes first person is a crutch. Sometimes multi-POV can be a crutch because the author isn't trusting the reader to sort of put the dots together and is sort of feeling they need this other character to explain stuff, when actually that's often sort of detracting from the suspense in the story. So I think it's worth just asking the why question, because I have sold historical, I've got this horror out now. I've sold a number of things with more than 2 protagonists because it serves the story. And I've never had an editor, I've never had an editor say, wow, this would just be so much better if it didn't have this, this many POVs, because I would never submit it if the story wasn't working and if the story needs 3 POVs or 5 POVs or whatever it may happen to be. I think it really just goes back to, does it serve the story?
Yeah.
Once you request a full, what's the ideal versus typical turnaround time? Are you a binge reader, or does it take several sittings? Kelly, let's start with you.
Well, for me, if I request a full, it actually goes into a queue. And so it's really, it's hard to say, when it can get bounced to the top of the queue is if there's an offer in place and I need to read it very quickly. And, you know, I'm not a particularly fast reader, but what I do like to do, and I do this for my clients as well, and I've started doing it with the fulls that are in my box, is letting them know that it's got my attention. So, if it's time, if your full has reached the top of my queue and I'm reading it, a lot of times I'll just, especially if it's been several months that I've had it in my inbox, I will just zip a quick message saying, just to let you know, this now is at the top of my queue and I'll be taking a look at it. Doesn't mean I'll get back to you all that fast, but at least it's got my attention so that people know that it's, I know that people are waiting, it's part of the process, and it's not fun, but I try to be respectful of that. But at the same time, time is a limited commodity, and I don't have, I can't stay awake 24/7. So that's the way it is for me.
Jackie?
I always put in my little thing that goes back to, when I request the full and you send it in, my little auto response says it typically takes me, I think, 2 to 3 months to read a full, but let me know if you get interest. I really try and read them within 2 months. I am a fast reader, which is maybe to my detriment because maybe I don't really let stuff sink in the way it could. But I also have a fairly full list, and I'm also very picky at the moment. So if I really am, not getting immersed fairly quickly in the piece, I think I'm probably not going to be the best agent right now anyway. And I think I would also add to what Kelly says that, editors aren't always fast either on submission or even when they're editing a piece. It is part of the business. And if you find that causes you tremendous anxiety, I'm not going to be an armchair psychologist here, but I think you need to probably come up with ways to deal with anxiety, because creative people are anxious people, and, have a mechanism, if you feel the anxiety and the stress creeping up, go for a walk, give yourself an ice cream, watch it, have something that's your go-to when you start spinning, because we all do it. Like I get like that about my client work. Like, why haven't I heard from these editors? And, you just have to sort of pull yourself away for your own mental health. So just throwing that out there.
Well, you two are much better than I. I am much slower at reading my fulls, and it takes me a while. So it can take me a while to get to your full, unfortunately. But it's not that I'm not interested in reading it. It's just that I have a very full list too, and my authors have been very prolific as of recently. So they've been sending me lots of projects, and their projects have to come before any submissions. Right. So I have to read their projects, edit their projects, get their projects out before anything else. So we are coming up on our hour. We started a few minutes late because obviously I had no idea what I was doing here. So, Jessica has requested if anyone would like to read her story, please get in touch with her because she would like your perspective. Let's see. Anything else have I missed?
I want to talk to Jessica.
Yes.
Jessica, you can change it anytime. It's not that you're only 3,500 words in, so you can definitely change it now. Revision is, you have to love revision, because once you find an agent, they're going to make you revise. And then once you have an editor, you're going to be doing revision. So don't stress.
I would 100% agree with that. You're only 3,500 words in. If the book started, if the voice came to you at the beginning of it in first person, I would say finish this draft in first person.
Yep.
Maybe even finish the next 2 drafts in first person. And that's when you can, once you stop telling the story to yourself, that's when it's a good time to evaluate if your point of view is correct. Like I said, with my own book, I wrote 4 or 5 drafts of it in first person before I changed it to third. So it's just part of the process, but you're not doing, there's no right or wrong.
Nope.
It's really how the work speaks to you and what you're doing the best with your craft to serve that particular story.
Yeah. I mean, also find a writer's group. Like a critique group will be your bread and butter. Like I have somehow picked up several authors from the same critique group. I don't know how this has happened, but like they join, they're like, "Oh, you're a such and such too?" And I'm like, "Wait, how do you guys all know each other?" Like
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. I have several from one group, and if you know which group that is, then good for you. So, all right, we will end with this final question here, which is there anything you'd love to see in genre fiction lately?
I'd love someone to send me a horror-mance so I know what it is, because I don't know what the stupid thing is.
So Jackie would love some horror-mance. Kelly, anything for you?
You know, I would love some cozy YA fantasy, cozy fantasy and YA. And I don't know. I'm just ready for something really, really unique. That's not helpful, I know.
No, it is helpful. I'm cheating because we had some questions sent to us from our marketing guru, and she asked us what our ideal manuscript wish list item is, and that was one of our required questions. And so I actually have it pulled up on my screen here.
I haven't answered it yet.
So I'm cheating. I'm going to read it from my screen, which is okay, so there's several things, but one thing that I really, really would love right now is like a suspense / thriller that has like some vibes of like smashing the patriarchy. Maybe there's a revenge angle in it. It's, with smart, fierce women, strong female friendships, no mean girls. I really do mean that. Has a surprising twist somewhere in it that just feels like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I should have seen that coming, that kind of moment. Has maybe a touch of humor and a satisfying ending. And it can, but doesn't have to, have a romance angle. So there you go. That's my bullet point list of something that I would really be into if you have that.
So I would love a twist, a mystery with a really great twist. I just read one and the twist made me laugh out loud. It's a very well-known crime writer, and this is one of her recent books. And I was just like, when I got to it, I was like, I would never have thought of this, and it's so good.
I love it when it's a twist that like makes sense. And like, you're like, oh my gosh, I should have seen this coming. And now I will preface all of this with, I do read a synopsis before I read a full manuscript. And I do expect there to be spoilers in that synopsis, but it will not ruin the book for me, because I love, love, love reading a book where I know what the twist is and I can see the dominoes being lined up. So I get to purely enjoy your genius as you are doing it. So it's really actually a pleasure for me to know exactly how you're going to do it. So when I see it happening, I'm like, oh my gosh, this writer is amazing. So I love that. Love it, love it, love it. So, okay. Well, I think that's it. Yep. We are done. We did it. We didn't get on all the social media platforms, but you know what? We did a live AMA. We did it.
You did it.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'm trying to get this thing to go off. Make sure you're following us on all our social media. We have all the things, right? So follow us on Instagram or whatever. We do these monthly. Our next AMA will be the last Wednesday of June, which I'm sure if I can pull up my calendar here, I could figure out when that's going to be.
Fine, but
June 25th, same time, 7 o'clock. Eastern time. So make sure you mark your calendar. And if you have questions beforehand, feel free to send them in. Although we didn't get to a lot of our pre-recorded questions today. So I'm really excited. Thank you everyone who joined us tonight. You guys are amazing. You made tonight special and fun. And we do hope that you come back. And if you have any follow-ups, leave us comments below and we will get back to you. So thanks again, everyone. And if I'm going to figure out how to end the streaming, does anyone else have anything to say?
Good luck.
Good luck to me. So you might be just seeing me press buttons for 5 minutes. I have no idea. So thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.